So let's talk about Bambi 2, one of Disney's direct-to-video sequels. And it's called Bambi 2, even though it's a midquel, and it's not after Bambi 1. It's between the moment where Bambi's mom is murdered, and is that before Bambi becomes a young adult in the movie, in the first movie. Now, Bambi 2, out of all the Disney direct-to-video sequels, I feel like this one could be considered the best because it is one that is the most harmless. Um, the animation style, it's not the same, but it is damn near close. They try their hardest to make this movie be so intricate, like to the first one, to how it looks, to how these characters act. There are only a few moments in the movie where there are a couple jokes that I feel like are modern, not like terrible, but they're just like, oh, you can tell this is a joke made in 2006 whenever this was released. And I feel like this is one of the Disney direct-video sequels that is honestly one of the best and one of the most worth it, because it's harmless, but I think it's a really great sequel because Bambi works really well as the first Bambi, as it is quote-unquote harmless. It is one of those movies that has such sincerity to it with these characters that they don't have to be complex. And this works really well because of that. The sequel works because it's strong on that fact, where the first movie wasn't super complex, so this direct-to-video sequel works because it's not complex like the first one is. So I like that you have a direct-to-video sequel that doesn't completely tarnish the first one. This one is just, you can call it harmless, but I think that it works really well, honestly. I really, really love this sequel, and I think that it is really, really honestly worth checking out if you love the first one, because it does try to be so authentic to the first one. It tries to be really close to it. Like I said, since it's right when Bambi's mom is killed, right up to when Bambi becomes a young adult, it's just him learning with his father, like his mysterious father from the first one that we knew not much about. It's him building a relationship with his father that he never had, or he never saw in the first one. And I really think that that is cool, and it is warranted to me, because it works really well with where Bambi, since we didn't see much of a relationship with him and his father, I think that it works really well. And I think that the father character, since he was so mysterious in the first one, I like that we get something about him. So then in the end of Bambi 1, you see them together and you feel like, oh, they probably formed a bond. And I liked how you see how they form a bond in this, and it really felt strong. Even though the movie is cliched, I think it works well, and I think that this felt like it would have been made right after Bambi 1. This direct-to-video sequel felt like it would have been made right when the first one came out. Because of how simplistic it is. And that's why I think it's one of the best Disney direct-to-video sequels, because it's so simplistic and doesn't have to be something bigger than the other ones, because the first one is already simplistic. So it works really well in the fact just showing Bambi more of his life, more of him with his father, more of him with his friends. I like the idea that we get more threats of man in this movie. I love the idea of how the deer calls in a deer's mind sounds like another deer's voice. I think that is really, really cool, just how they made the sound when the deer hears it. When Bambi hears it, he thinks he hears his mother, and that emotionally actually works really well from the first one, because he lost his mother, and then he wants her so bad, and then he hears this noise like she's there, but she's not. And that really works on an emotional level for me. It really was strong in that aspect. And I like that we got that Rano character from the first one, who just literally appears, pushes Feline away, and then Bambi and him fight, and that's it. And I didn't understand that, but I guess in the first movie it makes sense a little bit, in which deers do that. They just have that authoritative way of taking the man's girl away. So he did that, but he wasn't developed at all, the Rano character. And I like that the Rano character in this was Bambi met in his youth, and the Rano character was just a douchebag. And in the end, of course, he says that line, like, I'll get you sometime, and that makes sense in the first one, which I thought was the only kind of dumb thing about this movie. Like, oh, yeah, I know he's going to be back. Why do you have to say that? That's stupid. Um, but Bambi 2 overall just is so simple, but it's so emotional, like the first one, and it felt like it could be done. It could have been done in 1940, this movie, and almost nothing would have changed besides a couple modern, like, uh, jokes in this movie, but they weren't like jokes that were overly modern. It was just I felt like this writing sometimes was modern as opposed to 1940s, but I feel like almost the majority of this movie could have been made in 1940 with the first one. So I think that this does a really strong and authentic way of doing more of this Bambi story without trashing it or without making it have anything that wasn't needed. And I felt like this, a lot of people can take or leave this sequel, but to me, this was a really, really well done, albeit simple, but a really well done and executed direct-to-video sequel.